Hey guys, hope you're all well and enjoying the week of build-up to the great day of Christmas. Apologies that I didn't get a devotional out yesterday. I hate missing on these things, but I'm really excited to pick up from where we left off on Friday. On Friday we were talking about the forgiveness that took place between Jacob and Esau. We spoke about how that Jacob had run to the end of his tether, was desperate to just get this off his back, met with his brother, forgave his brother, great reconciliation took place. Jacob left having been given a new name after wrestling with the angel, and it was a great biblical proportional restitution that took place. And my encouragement then was, why don't we do the same thing, man? If forgiveness is going to do such a great thing for us, then pray tell, why do we not forgive? But then I move on today and I look at the next aspect of the story, and I see how Jacob was a great example of one who took the bull by the horns, and he went out there and he forgave. But I wonder if it's not true to say that forgivers breed forgivers. Let me explain. You see, Jacob had a son. His name was Joseph. And you know the story of Joseph full well, I'm sure. Joseph was wronged by his brothers. He was abused. He was sold as a slave. He was lied about. He was put into prison. He was maligned. He was alienated. He was sidelined. But then over the course of time, he rose up through the prison ranks and ultimately became prime minister of Egypt. And one day, Joseph, with all this immense power, was confronted by a choice he had to make. And you know the choice. He met his brothers. The same brothers that sold him as a slave into Egypt. Joseph now is confronting them with what they had done. And they're looking at themselves and saying, well, we're done. That's it. He's going to kill us. Here's the power. Here's authority. We've done wrong. We're dead. And yet Joseph, in that beautiful reunion that took place when he restored his brothers, forgave them for what they had done to him. A couple of things here. I wonder if when I said forgivers breed forgivers, if that's not true. You see, I wonder what example he must have looked at to say, well, how do I behave in this particular situation? How do I behave when I have the power? And power can corrupt terribly when you have it. And he looked at this and he said, I have the power. I will use that power well, and I will forgive. And he forgave his brothers. I wonder if he looked and he remembered his dad, Jacob, as he would have heard the stories around the campfire or around the table as they sat there together as a family. And he would have spoken with his dad in those favorable years. And his dad probably would have given him the great advice to say, Jacob, remember, Joseph, remember always to forgive. And so Joseph learned from his father, Jacob. But then you say, well, if that's not quite good enough, is there something else in addition to that? Indeed, there is. I wonder if Joseph didn't have a special revelation of the sovereignty of God, because he was able to say to his brothers when they said, how can you forgive us? He came up with that most profound line. Do you remember it? Where he said, you intended it for evil, but God intended this for good. And because of what you have done, many thousands of people's lives are going to be saved. You see, Joseph understood so well the sovereignty of God. Now that just simply means that everything that happens to us is seen through God's eyes. That everything that happens to you, good, bad, or indifferent, is seen through the eyes of God's sovereignty, because there is nothing that can happen to you outside of God's control and God's permission. And so when Joseph was pondering his life, he had a great example of a dad who forgave. He had a great example of a principle that God's sovereignty always wins at the end of the day. So I guess the choice for us when we're faced with similar things is, do we want to get better or do we want to be bitter? Because bitterness is a miserable way to die. You know, I heard somebody saying that unforgiveness is like taking poison that you want to give to the guy you don't want to forgive, and you die of the very poison you want to give to him. That's a miserable thing. The challenge to us today, do you want to get better or do you want to stay bitter? If you want to get better, look for a good example. There's no one better than Jesus. When Jesus hung upon the cross and he cried, Father, forgive them, they don't know what they are doing. There was a cry out to say, Lord, they don't know what they're doing, but you do. You are God and you are sovereign and your will always be achieved. Man, if we could just think like that, change the mindset of which the way we look at life, see life through the eyes of God's sovereignty and the eyes of God's will being done in our lives. Nothing, people, happens to you outside of the will and the way of God, and that's amazing. It's called His sovereignty. Think about that, especially in light of forgiveness. You're going to have a wonderful day, and I'll see you tomorrow. Bye.